I thought we might start if we go back, let's say like 5 years. What did life look like, and what were you doing sporting wise around that time?
So 5 years ago, more or less, I learned how to paraglide. I was already 1 year into paragliding, doing a lot of flying, getting better at flying, getting the idea of how to fly probably in acrobatics, but still didn't know how to do it. So I was pretty sporty. I was always on the mountain, always flying, always up, hiking. I never did any marathons, HYROX. Didn't know what HYROX is. I didn't. I was like thinking like if you do like a half marathon, that's probably the hardest thing you can do on the planet. I still didn't know about HYROX. I didn't know about all the ultras, about triathlons, about the stupid obstacle races, all the stuff people do for fun. I
Yeah.
didn't know about that. I just was on the mountain and doing my paragliding thing, which was my main sport. Other than that, I didn't do much in sports.
How had you got into paragliding in the first place?
Oh, I live close to the mountains, and you just see
Okay.
them all the time. And then when I was 18 years old, I just got like into flight school, learned it, got the license, was on the mountain.
Okay. Okay. So I think most people like listening to this will know you as SCI Motivation from Instagram or seeing you at a HYROX event, which is spinal cord injury, right? SCI. So can you tell us about that injury, how it came about, how old you were at the
So
time when it happened, everything like that?
when like 4 years after I learned how to paraglide, I was pretty professional at that point. I had over about 500 to 600 flights on my back. I know what I did. And therefore, I got like more adventures and tried a lot in acrobatics, and it worked out perfectly well till one day. And that one day was the 24th of October 2020. And it was a pretty decent day, good for acrobatics, low thermals. And I went up to the mountain, did my first training flight of the day. Everything worked out pretty well. I ended up being super low above ground, and then I decided to land on a normal landing field. And it was too low for that, certainly. But I was like, I can do it. I'm a more or less professional, so I can do this. And it was too low, definitely too low for that. So I still tried to make it happen. And with that, I crashed to the floor with probably like 30 kilometers of forward speed in like a rotating motion to the ground. Not really high, but all the combined factors was enough to break my lumbar spinal cord. And that I was on the floor. I couldn't move, but I didn't realize that. So I was still like, I'm fine, I can go back up, but I couldn't. So like for like 10 minutes after that, I called the rescue and I was like, something is not right, but I don't know what. But I still was like, for some, maybe I broke a leg or something because I only knew like if I can't move it or can't really move it, maybe it's broken. But I didn't
Mm-hmm.
know like about nerves, about our spinal cord, about our spine, anything. I didn't know it. So I was like not really worried. Then I called the rescue. They came, they loaded me on the vacuum table, put me into the ambulance, and they quickly realized that I didn't had any sensation at the point in my legs, which meant I was paralyzed at that moment already. And then they told me like, let's get an helicopter, let's get you to a specialized hospital. And I was like, what the hell? No, we don't need that. Because I was still not realizing that it's that important and that traumatic at that point. So yeah, they got the helicopter. I had a good flight. I always wanted to fly in a helicopter, but definitely not in a rescue helicopter, not as the patient at least. So
So you
they got
were you on your own? Like, you said you called the rescue, so
Yeah,
you were
I was
on
more
your
or less
own.
on my own. I mean, there were some spectators, but not other pilots. I was more or less on my own. I was fully conscious, so I didn't have that problem. So I still know what happened, everything in detail. Also a
Mhm.
good benefit to know that, because if you just don't know it, you don't know. But I know. So there's also in the recovery a little bit easier to know what happened. And yeah, they called the rescue. I was in the helicopter, arrived at the trauma center or shock room in that trauma center in Big Mono. And they like I was on the table there and they checked everything and they already knew like roughly what happened. So they got me into the CT machine, the full body CT, and they got like they know what they did. So they like realized immediately like spinal cord injury, L3, almost no function in the left legs, no sensation. So they got me into an emergency operation. They stabilized my back and but they already told me like before all that happened, they told me like it's not looking good. It's not looking good. And I was like, you're the professional, so make it good. I want to go back on the mountain. I want to fly again, you know? It was just like, why do I have to be here? I want to fly. I want to be back on the mountain. So they did the operation. I was 2 days and one night, no, 2 nights and one day in ICU care. So I still remember it, but you know, they don't tell you much there, they just care about you. And once they moved me on to the normal station in the hospital, they told me what happened, but they didn't told me about everything at that moment. So they still probably waited like another week to like exactly tell me what happened and tell me the consequences from that injury, because it's not just something you break something, you wait a few months, you do some PT and you're fine and you're good to go. Spinal cord injury is something life-changing. Spinal cord injury is like they tell you, or the normal case is that you will never walk again. You will have complete loss of sensation and motor control before below my level of injury. In my case, it was below the belly button, somewhere around there. So it's definitely something life-changing, and it takes a lot of time to get adapted to that and learn how to live a life in a wheelchair. Everything you like to learn that, it takes several months. So I was in a hospital for over 3 months. Nothing was happening there. They all kept telling me like, you will live your life in a wheelchair. There's no options. You can just do the best now, and you can just learn how to adapt. You can learn how to make transfer first. So from how to go from bed to wheelchair, and from wheelchair to the floor, and from the floor up if you fell out your wheelchair or anything. So the normal style wheelchair stuff, you know, nothing about walking, nothing how to walk again, just how to live in a wheelchair. And that was not good for me. I mean, it's something you have to learn at that point, but it's not the my option or my way where I wanted to go. So it
And
was
was your mindset like during that period of time, which is obviously like scary, and you're obviously like a positive guy now, and you've done so much since. But around that time, were you immediately like this isn't the option for me, or were you just like taking on
I
board
mean,
what
I
they
was
said?
like, no, that's not the way we do it differently. But at the same time, I was like 3 months into the hospital and I saw some progress, how to like, you know, how to do the transfers and everything. But I was still like saying, I'm gonna walk out of the hospital, which was definitely not the case, not at all, because I didn't have any function or just some minimal, like I could probably like move my leg like 1 or 2 centimeters in and out.
Mm.
Not even out, it was falling back out, and I could move it in a centimeter when I left the hospital. So I had no muscles or nothing that would even put me close to being able to stand up again or walk again. So
Wow.
I had to accept the diagnosis, but at the same time, I wanted at that time to say like in 2 years, in the 5 years, whatever, I want to say that I did everything that I could do to improve it, no matter how I will end up, you know. If it would be standing, a little bit of walking, if it would be walking a marathon, walking HYROX and all this stuff, what I achieved actually. But it was unclear, you know, it was like 100% or not, the wheelchair was 100% certain. Anything else, any real thing beyond that was optional, and not really optional for the doctors. It was just like in my mind for an option.
And how were you like coping at that time? Like 3 months in hospital, doing not a lot from someone that's been active previously. That must have been like a huge shock. Were you going through like a period of depression? Was it struggle
Well,
mentally?
I mean, I always kept myself positive and looked what I have done already, and looked forward to the future, and living basically day by day, week by week.
Yeah.
But it was a tough time, definitely. But you know, you learn like in paragliding, you learn like if you fail a maneuver, you just go back to it and do it again, do it again, and do it again, and eventually it will happen that you can do it. So.
So what was the rehab like? Was it a daily thing? Presumably, you were getting like exercises to do as much as you could. Was it, you know, a lot of hours you had to put into that?
So yeah, definitely lots of hours. So I got discharged from the hospital, and they wanted to put me into a stationary rehab place to keep continuing learning about wheelchair training, how to maneuver steps up and down in wheelchairs, how to make the transfers even better and that stuff. And I was not interested in that. So I was like, I don't want to go there. And the doctors told me like, you have to go there. And I'm like, no, why? It's not about walking the rehab, or is it? Do they have there's a machine called the Locomat, which is like the best rehabilitation tool for if you don't have any movement or very little movement to regain that. So it's like a walking robot on the treadmill. And I was like asking them if the clinic has that machine, and they're like, no. And I'm like, I'm not going there if they don't have that machine. I want to go someplace where they have a Locomat. So I did my research. I ended up being in an outpatient rehab center in Munich for 4 weeks. And there I was the first time put into that Locomat walking robot. And that machine unloads you with an harness, and then your legs get strapped into some cuffs and some brackets, and then the machine can move your legs for you, even if you're like fully paralyzed and couldn't walk. And that's the best stimulation to like remember the nerves and the brain and everything about how is it to walk. So and I did that daily on that clinic, and I had to pay a lot of money for that, but I did that daily. And with that, I slowly like I realized how good that can help you, or can help me in that case. But I also realized like if I do that a couple of weeks, it will be not enough to be able to like starting to walk again. And they also told me like if you want to make some great progress, maybe into walking, they told me like probably like a year or two of Locomat training. And I was like, I don't want to go to Munich. It's like 2 hours for me every day to do that. And I don't want to live in Munich, even if it's a beautiful city. So I made my research, and I actually found a used Locomat that I could buy and put it into my or close to the house. So I did that, which is like super, super unusual. The machine is like 1.1 tons heavy, 280 centimeters tall. So you can't really put that into a house. So we built like outdoor a little terrace shed with some walls on it, and we put it there because that was the only option we had. So I ended up going there with a couple of friends and family members, and then we dismantled that Locomat, put it back together. No guarantee that it will work again, but as I'm working also in the technology department before my injury, I knew like how to work with tech and computers. So we had an idea, but it worked out at the end, and I was able to walk again in that machine for like 3-4 hours a day over several months. And then I really started to regain function in my hip and knees from the training. So I ended up like after 2 to 3 months, I ended up to be able to crawl again like a baby on a mat on the floor. I was able to crawl, and that ended up being pretty good and pretty fast. And with that status, I regained my hip movement. I regained some of my knee movement. And with that, I met a therapy center in the United States that told me like I was originally planning to do some virtual therapy or virtual coaching with them. But they told me like, if you come here, we're gonna like make sure we do everything that we can get you back on your legs because you have to function now. Because I could move my legs, but I just couldn't bear, or I also was able after the leukemia to walk on the treadmill with a body weight support system, but I was
Mhm.
not able to like bury the weight in on my legs and really doing the steps independently without the treadmill. So they told me like I should come there, and I ended up. It was the COVID time, so it was not possible to fly normally to the United States from travel restrictions. So I had to get like a letter from different doctors, and they told me like the only way to get into the United States at that point was with a medical uh, exception rule. So I had to
Mhm.
get that over the consular. It was pretty complicated, but I ended up getting that. And after 2 weeks after I decided to go to Miami for the therapy, I ended up being there. So it was pretty fast. I moved pretty quick and decided quickly, which was also a really crucial part of that recovery. And I was there, and after the first setting of 11 weeks, 3 to 4 hours training daily, I was able to walk in crutches. It was slow, it was uncontrolled. I started like with 0.01 kilometers, 0.1 kilometers per hour. And I
All
was
right.
able to
On the
point one,
treadmill.
1 kilometer, point one.
Okay.
That's slow, really, really slow. If you look down in my Instagram SCI motivation, you will see all the videos and see that. And I like pushed, like I was able to kick my leg out, and it was swinging back, and then I was able to little bit like with a lot of upper body to stand on it. So it was not really walking, it was not functional, but it was like the first stage of like being able to stand again and walk again. I was not able to stand up by myself at that point from the wheelchair and anything. So that was like the first idea of walking. So I kept training with that. I went back to the States, and I learned how to stand up from the wheelchair with my crutches. Not really safe, but I was able to do it somehow. And I kept going with that. And then I was probably like in August 2021, so 7, 8 months into the recovery, I was able to walk probably like with 0.5 kilometers an hour, zero point 0.6, getting to the 1 kilometer an hour. And then I started to push myself. So the first goal I had was to walk to a lake close to my home. So I did that, and that's usually like an 8 minute walk. If
Mhm.
you normally walk, like if you run, it's probably like just like 2 or 3 minutes. And I ended up walking there with like several breaks, sitting down, and it took me 2 hours, 15 minutes, something like that. Really, really slow. But I like started to realizing like how I have to push myself. So I did that, and I really like I went on a treadmill and did my first 500 meters in something like for like an hour, something like 500 meters. You usually do that in like a minute or 2 minutes, whatever.
Were
So
you through all this time, like the training is like hours and hours a day, like with very little progress at a time. It's you need like a motivator to do all that. And I mean, obviously you want to walk again, but was there one particular thing driving you? Was it just walk again? Was it do
no, it was really like the results basically to see like at the end of the week you're a little bit better than last week.
little bit of progress every
Little,
time? Yeah.
little, little, little bit, like really, really small steps. But
Okay.
I was like realizing, okay, if I stick with it, I can be better in like a month. So I stick
Yeah.
with it. It was basically just like day by day, 3 hours a day training, 4 hours a day training. I was just like sticking with it, I was not creating, I was not thinking about why should I do it, if it's worth it. I was just doing it.
Okay. Amazing. And were the like the doctors at the time, were they were you surrounded by encouraging doctors? Were they like
No, I mean, like I had made my experience with them, so I was like keeping my way out of them, and I was like, I was the creator of my recovery. It was not
Mhm.
like driven by, it was driven by physical therapists, but it was my plan at the end. I learned how to like I learned to be my best physical therapist too in America. So I learned that how I have to train, and the training thing was basically also something that's really good for HYROX training. It was like if I couldn't move or if I couldn't walk, I was able to doing some steps with the walker, but I was not able to do it with crutches in the early stages. So the center in America and why I really thought it was the best one at that time was they gave me the crutches. And even if I couldn't do it, they somehow assisted me barely enough that I could do it with the crutches. And then they put ankle weights on my legs. The legs were still so weak. So it doesn't make sense, you say, usually to put ankle weights on them.
Mm.
And I was not really able to walk with them with the ankle weights. But I tried and we kept doing that for probably like 20 minutes. And once they took the ankle weights off, it was way easier than before. So you have to make it harder to make it easy.
Yeah.
If you do, if you are struggling with wall balls, take that 9 kilogram ball and practice with that. It will be terrible, I will promise you. But the 6 kilo or the 4 kilo will afterwards feel super easy.
Yeah.
And that's how I
When-
work recovery.
Okay. It's amazing. So when like we know you from HYROX, and I know you've done some other sort of sporting achievements as well that we can talk about, but was it just a gradual process that you've gone from like, this week over week improvement to get into one of those things, or was that always like a goal in the back of your mind to do something like that?
So I mean I started like I saw a video of a paralyzed girl finishing like just like a couple of meters off the finish line of in 5K. So that was my goal, and I actually did that 1 year after my spinal cord injury. I
Wow.
did. It took me like 2 hours for 800 meters of walking, and it was like a little curb, and I was so unsecure and so unstable when I walked like over the curb. It was so terrible. But I ended up doing like my first race. That was September 2021, and I ended up doing that, and I really enjoyed it. But at the same time, I was like, I have to practice a lot more. So I did that. I kept going with like 3 hours, 4 hours daily of training. And at that time, I practiced more to walk with the braces. I practiced how to walk faster. I worked a lot on gait pattern, how I can do it and how I can improve my gait. And I ended up improving it a lot. And I also ended up improving my speed to probably like 1.2, 1.4, 1.8 kilometers at that time. I ended up just being able to like stand like with my knees overextended, with my back overextended, but I was able to stand more or less without support at that time, and I practiced that a lot. And from there on, I just kept going. I went back to the United States in April 2022, and I ended up like it was there. It was my idea to do a part of a 5K, and they're like, "You should go for the full 5K." And I was like, "What the fuck? No!" And they're like, "We see. If not, we will carry you or whatever." And I was like, "Okay, we have to go for it." And I was like, "Let's get my wheelchair. Let's keep him with us that I can like if my legs get too tired, I can sit down and roll." And they're like, "No, we know we don't do that." So I ended up doing my first 5K in April 2021 with it took me like 3 hours and 40 minutes for a 5K. When we reached the finish line, they were already like put it down more or less. So it was nobody was there anymore. But it was fun. I did it with a good friend of mine from Miami, and it was a great time. And that started to like push something in me. I was still like really weak. It took me a long time to do the distances, but I ended up also to using one crutch tip completely gone in one race. So that's also got me excited, like how fast can I use another crutch tip and make it disappear from the rubber, you know? And I started with that and I kept pushing. I also started to like move on little hills and little inclines in nature, in the forest, still with a physical therapist behind me to catch me. But I started really to train more for like normal day life. And then October 2020, no, September 2022, less than 2 years after my injury, I ran my first 11K quarter marathon. That video got over 1.1 million views on Instagram. It was really like pushing it. I gained a lot of followers from that as well. And I did that in 3 hours 20. And the beautiful thing was it was a marathon, a half marathon, and quarter marathon in one event. So 8,000 people at the start line. I was racing there. People were overtaking me for a long time. It was really motivating. And I ended up being not alone at the finish line anymore because there were still some people coming in from the marathon, probably some people from the half marathon.
Yeah.
And that was really like my first race that I really enjoyed, but also in ways where I was not really able to walk the days after because it was just so hard on my body. So
Were,
I ended up
were,
being, yes.
were these events like a motivator for you as well to continue to train and push yourself? Like, was it?
I mean, it was not at that time that much, but I started to realizing like how great events is and how inspiring my journey is for the people, like from being able to not told to never walk again to walking some races on crutches,
Yeah.
you know? So I really enjoyed that and also the feedback from the people from that.
Did you find that I was listening to a podcast the other day and they were talking about the differences in different nationalities and how it was a business podcast, but they were talking about how much more positive like the American attitude is with like you can do anything, you can start a podcast, and like in Europe it's less so. And like you just mentioned, like you went back to America and they encouraged you to do that full 5K. Did you find that there was differences in the
So
attitudes
yeah.
towards it?
So I think the main difference is also the system there because people usually pay for the physical therapy in full with a lot of money in America. So they definitely like if you go to a physical therapist here, you're not really expecting good results. You just like go there, they treat you, they work with you, and you go home and you're like, yeah, maybe I feel a little bit of difference and I feel some difference. But you're like, if you wouldn't pay it out of your own pocket, many people would not go to the PT here, I would guess. So in America, it's different because people pay out of their own pocket most of the times. The therapists have to deliver results and work really tough and hard with you to get the results. So I think that also, and if they don't work good and hard with you and you don't achieve results with that, they probably end up having less clients or no clients. And if they don't have clients, they don't make money. And if they don't have money, they will probably end up all on the street with no good social system like we do. So it's more an obligation for them. They have to be good and have to do great work. Whether here if you're a physical therapist, you can work like if you quit at one place or get fired, you can just start at another place right away.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's so overbooked here. They don't demand a good quality here.
Okay.
That's what I experienced. And of course, the American culture is way more encouraging and positive as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But
All right.
also less into details. They just like see the big picture, but less the details. It's also something different.
Okay. Okay. So you
Talk about
did.
HYROX. You ready?
Yeah. Let's talk HYROX. Yeah. So how did that come about? How did you discover that?
Okay, so in my local gym, they did HYROX PFT. And I was on vacation at that time, and the weather went bad in France. So I was like, I can go home 2 days earlier and do that HYROX PFT. And the HYROX PFT, if you know it, it's way easier than the HYROX. So I was like, if I adapt, I could probably do the HYROX PFT. So I went there, and Florian Gast, one of the elite athletes of HYROX, was there as the coach or the trainer of that HYROX PFT. And he told me like, I have to be here. Whatever I have to do to adapt, it's possible, so I can do it. So I did the full distance with 500 meters of walking, and I did the lunges a little bit adaptive, and the other exercise worked out pretty good at that time. So I was able to do it, but it took me like 40 minutes, 50 minutes or something like that. And then he was like, I'm so inspiring, I have to do an HYROX. And I was like, it's cool, I want to do it, but there's no way. There's absolutely no way. I just did like the small PFT with the 500-meter run, and running takes the most time for me at something like that. So it took me like, if I'm gonna do that full HYROX with the 8K and all the exercises, it's pretty impossible. So I was like, no, I don't like to. And then he was like, you have to do it. You have to do it. And I was like, okay, let's do it. Let's see how I have to adapt. And I did that. And he also put me in contact with Mintra, the head of HYROX, more or less. And she was like, she was really excited. We had a phone call. And then we spoke about HYROX Munich, which was like still like 4 months apart from the PFT. And no, actually 5 months, but it was still a long time to that. And then I was back in the States. I did a 5K on Miami International Airport runway. That was pretty fun. And then a friend of mine from the States invited me to Chicago. And I was like, it's cool, I want to do that. And there was the HYROX Chicago, which was ended up being my first race on the same weekend. So I was like, I'm going up to Chicago, and I will text HYROX America to see if it's possible to race there. And that was like a week before the event happened. So I ended up getting no responses till 3 days before the race. And they was like, sure, come by, we will do it, just come by and we will see how you can adapt. Whatever you have to do, just do it. We are excited, just come by and race. And I was like, okay, let's do it. So I started doing that first HYROX. And it took me a long time, a really long time. And I only run 1 lap instead of 3. And it still took me a long, long time. I was able to adapt pretty good with it. I had less weights on the sleds, of course. And I had the Go Rock weight rest instead of the kettlebells at the farmer's carry. And I had no weight on the lunges. But it worked out pretty well, and they were really excited. They released a big video with an interview and everything about me. That was the first interview with HYROX, or first video on Instagram with HYROX. And it ended up getting a lot of views and a lot of people that are so inspired by that story. And I also, like, during the race, I was like, oh shit, why did I sign up for that? And after the race, I think like many people know that. Like after I was like, I want to do that again. And I want to do that again soon.
I think
So
that's everyone that does a HYROX, right?
yes,
Why are
that's
we
everyone.
doing this? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Were they always, they were very accommodating with the adaptations needed on
Yes.
the stations, yeah?
Especially like in America, because it's just like, and also the people on the track were the best people the best crowd I ever had, because like everyone was clapping, saying something. It was just a wonderful time at HYROX America in Chicago. So I ended up being back in Germany, and then there was the next race in Frankfurt, Germany, which was my first German race, and I contacted Mintra again, and we spoke about everything, and it was way more structured, and it was way more difficult for me in terms of the adaptations. And that was pretty tough. It took me, the first German race took me 3 hours and 20 minutes. You know, usually you like 1.5 hours, something like that. And I still had a lot of adaptations at that time. So I did that race and it was really exciting too. They did a big video as well. It was just fantastic to like be racing like back home in Germany. So I ended up signing up for HYROX Stuttgart and HYROX Karlsruhe in January and February. I got more experience with HYROX, and I also was able to like get my time better and better the more I did it. So I did these two races. Sadly, I was sick for HYROX Munich, so I couldn't do it. So I did HYROX Karlsruhe 1 week later instead. Then I was like, I want to do one more. I want to do one more. So I ended up doing HYROX Cologne last year in 2023. I did HYROX London, which was one of the incredible locations, venues I ever been to. So I did HYROX London Olympia last year in May, and I met the wonderful HYROX UK team, which is amazing as well. So I was like, I want to come back to the UK for racing because it's just way bigger and way more crowded, the events in the UK than in Germany at the time. So I did that, HYROX London in May 2023. And then I did the first one in Munich. And the exciting thing about Munich in the fall 2023 was that I did two races in one day. So I did a doubles and a singles at that for the first time, but it was still in Munich. So I just had to go out after that to the car, drive home directly to the house and go to bed and recover. But my doubles partner, Doris Kneidinger from Wien, was an amazing partner for the race. But she also was, my pace was way faster than hers. So it was kind of a relaxed second race on that day.
Right.
So I ended up talking to some friends on the course, to some people I know. And she was like, and then I catch up with my crutches again to her. And it was a very slow, it took us like over 2 hours something to finish that race together. And I did my first race, I think it was roughly 1 hour and 30 minutes in Munich in the singles as well. So that was really exciting. And that's on the same day, basically. And I also had the opportunity to be a judge at the Volvos at that day, which was fantastic, the experience, to see it from the outside.
Yeah.
And then I was like, I want to do more races. And Germany didn't have a lot of races to offer at the time. So I went back to HYROX London in Excel in November. And that was one of the biggest races I ever attended, with a long, long running course and a huge rock zone. So it was kind of tough. And with London, like you visit the city before, you walk around a lot to get from the airport to the venue and everything. So that was really, really tough on my body. And it took me so, so long to get back to the airport after the race because I was just like so, so tired. And I was thinking like I'm not thinking anymore of like quick 200 or 300 meter distances from tram to tram. But at that time after the race, I was so tired. I was like taking breaks for like 100 meter because I was not really able to walk anymore because everything was so sore at that time.
Yeah. Even getting out of the London XL is long enough, right? Just
Yeah,
getting back to the car.
it's a huge, huge venue. I mean, I know the venue from other events before my injury, so I
Right.
know it's huge and I know it's a long way. But it was so long after the race to get out to the station, get to the hotel, and get around there, and then from there you go to the next day you head to the airport, and it's just like a long, long way.
Does
So.
it take you a long time to recover after these events? Is the recovery like
So
quite
early
significant?
on in the first races, it took me like weeks
Right.
to, and I was so sore after that. But like after November 2022, I quit using my wheelchair, so I had no other option, and that was not because I'm ready, because I wanted to push myself at that time. So I really pushed myself to not use it anymore. And because before I always like when I was tired and sore, I used the wheelchair to get around. But I was like, daily life is also really good training. So I created that, and that was so hard on my body. And from there on, I was not using it anymore since a year. So I definitely, I was not going back to the wheelchair just to recover, even if I was so sore. So I took it easy these days and recovered from that race. And then I did, what else race did I did? I did HYROX Frankfurt in December 2023. The second time in Frankfurt, also 1 hour 34, something like that. So way quicker than 3 hours 20 the year before for the same race.
Wow,
So I
that's
almost like
amazing.
more than doubled the time. And that's, not something you'll see quite often.
No, no, that's incredible. Wow. And then so you did Frankfurt, and then I know you did London this recently when we're recording this. Did you do any between there?
I did the HYROX Cologne, of course, again
Of course.
at
Yeah.
Google, which was like a huge event as well. We met some good elite athletes as well on that race. So I did that, and then I just did London again. But the exciting news, I did two races in London. Why not? So it was not right, the decision. It was terrible, actually. So I had a really early start time at 8:40 in the morning. So I had to get up like 5:30 to get like I was in Canary Wharf for the night in the beautiful skyline there. So I had to get like over 1.5 hours by public transport and a lot of walking as well. By the way, to London Olympia, and I started there, and I did the registration, and we had the doubles with a friend of mine from the UK, adaptive doubles, and she was on the same or more or less on the same pace as me. So it was a tough race for me. And because it was her first HYROX, I also did a little bit more of the exercises. So it was pretty tough for me, the first race. And then I had the second race in the afternoon. We finished that with something over 2 hours as well, but it was a big course as well in London. And then the other race was 16:10 in the afternoon, together with the boys Ricky and Taylor. I don't know if you know them.
Tyler Saunders, yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
They've both been on the podcast actually, Tyler and Ricky Banner, yeah.
Perfect. So, and like I met Ricky before the race, and we were like, let's get in the same start wave. And Emilia made it possible at the registration. So we ended up being in the same start wave together also with Tyler, which was quite fun, to be like three people fighting for HYROX in the same start HYROX, in the same start wave. So we did that. It was pretty fun to be with the boys on the course. We had like an Instagram story, the adaptive boys making trouble and that stuff. So it was pretty fun. And yeah, we did the race. And it was incredible, the second race. But as soon as I was on the rower at the fifth station, I was like, oh man, that's tough.
So this was the same day. You did the second
That
two
was the
races in
same
the
day,
same day. Wow.
two races same day. So I was on the rower, and I had like usually like I'm around like 240 for 500 meters, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I ended up being like at 340, 4 minutes, something like that. Just like trying to get it over. Everything was hurting at the time already. And then the hardest exercise for me in HYROX is actually farmer's carry. So
Right.
even if I only have the 16 kilogram kettlebells, it's so tough for balance and being able to carry them.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that was this also a really bad exercise for already having one race down and the second half of the other race to finish. So I ended up doing that in a long time. It took me a long time to do it. And I had to rest the kettlebells on my crutches for many times to be able to walk through it. Lunges went, yeah, quite bad as well. It took me a long time because I was just like so sore in my shoulders, which I used with my crutches to get up from the floor. And also my legs were not able to carry that much weight anymore. So I had to do even more with my upper body. And wobbles went pretty quick, pretty good actually, because it's like above the head, the movement. So that went okay. And I actually did like 40 or 50 wobbles unbroken at first. But then I was regretting that because then I dropped it like 10, another 10, another 8, another 7, and another 8 or something like that. You know, I was just like, and then probably the rest of I was at 92 and I still had 8 to go, and I was like, had no idea how I'm gonna finish them.
Wow, that's amazing. I mean, everything's amazing that you've done really ever since the injury, but like 2 in 1 day is incredible because I know how much one hurts.
Well, I finished that race and I was like, that was not wise at all. That was stupid. You know, it was just like terrible. And I was laying down on the stage for like for 4 minutes or something like that. And getting up from that, it was terrible.
Do you? I talk to a lot of people in here and ask them where their mind goes during like these tough events. What motivates them during the middle of a race? What is it for you? Where does your mind go?
It's probably just like I'm in the moment and I'm like, I'm seeing myself on the finish line. But at the same thing, I was like, oh God, why did I do that? And I think that's really like, why did I even sign up for that? Why did I travel that far for HYROX London in that case? You know, you're just like regretting your decision. But at the same time, like when you be back on the course or even at the station, the people clapping and motivating you. So you feel also really excited and thankful to be able to actually do it. Because for my case, it was not something that people told me I could do again. It was the opposite. It was like, you will never do it again. You will never walk again. You will never stand again. You can do adaptive sports in a wheelchair, but you can't do sports anymore. You know, that was my thing like 3 years before that. And
What's
with
the
that, you are just like, you are so thankful for the people who made that recovery possible, and also like for yourself, because you went through all of that and you never quit. You just kept going the whole time. And then when you like, I'm like probably like 0.5% of the people with a spinal cord injury that are that well off. You know, it's so unique because nobody goes for that big. The people
Mhm.
always go like, I want to do adaptive sports. I want to do that, which is great. You know, it's great to have adaptive sports and that stuff, but nobody sets goal big enough to really like being able to do events like HYROX or other endurance stuff where we be like we're going to talk about other events as well that I did after that injury. These are events where normal people are like, that's too crazy. I'm not able to do that, you know, with HYROX as well. So many people think like, I will never do an HYROX. I can't do an HYROX. You have to be so strong and fit for that.
Do you see yourself as an inspiration and like showing people what is possible? Is that part of the reason that you do what you do?
That's the main reason I would say why I do all the videos, why I do all the races. Because, you know, for me, paralyzed is not an excuse. And I mean that it's not an excuse for not trying. Because you never know where you're gonna end up if you're like really pushing into for a couple of years. So for me, that was never an excuse. So I just did the best way possible and trained as much as possible. I'm talking like 3, 4 hours a day, 6, 7 days a week for years. Not doing PT like 30 minutes for 3 days a week. That will not get you anywhere close to where I wanted to be at that time.
What's been the toughest thing over the past few years, like since the injury? And you can take that any way you want. Is it mentally something that you've missed? Is it one of the events that you've done? Is it doing 2 races in Olympia?
Yeah,
Is it
many
like
things. You know, I'm gonna talk about the events later on. The other events that I did. Some events way crazier than HYROX actually, and way
okay?
tougher. So I think it was just like the early stages of the recovery, like all the people confronting you, like you will never do, you will never walk again, and that stuff. And also like the first time to be able to stand, the first time you walked, the first time you walked with crutches, the first time you walked with sticks, the first time you walked without the sticks. free with just the braces, all this stuff. Like well, once you do it like for the first time, it's always going to be hard and not easy probably. But like if you keep going with that, it will end up getting easier on the way.
Mhm. Um, you just talked about a lot of HYROX experiences. What's been your favorite out of all of those? Does anything spring to mind?
Okay, so HYROX Chicago was definitely one of my favorites because it was the first time. HYROX Olympia, the first one I did, it was because it was just a beautiful venue with so many people. Uh, the second one in London was also great because it was way bigger and way more people. The one in Munich was great because I did two events, two races in one day, and I did my first double, or the first adaptive double worldwide, actually. So that was kind of exciting as well. I think like this London was also really amazing. It was one of probably like the three favorite HYROX events. And then I did. I'm super excited for the World Championships in Nice this year, where I'll be invited by HYROX, and some special surprises will come along with that too. So get
Yeah.
excited for that, and I will be racing in Nice on Saturday.
Okay, brilliant. Awesome. All right, amazing. So, you touched on you've done some other things aside from HYROX. What else? What else has there been?
Okay, so the first really crazy race I did besides HYROX was on the same weekend as HYROX Chicago. So on Saturday, HYROX Chicago hit, and on Sunday there was Skyrise Chicago, which is a stair climbing competition. And I'm like very easy on flat surfaces to walk,
Mhm.
but anything that goes up is way more exhausting and way more tough for me than anything else. So, and that was my deal with my friend that we're gonna race HYROX on Saturday and do the stair climbing competition in Chicago on Sunday. And that was going all the way up to Willis Tower, which is the 20th tallest building in the world. And it was 105 floors of stairs,
Wow.
and it was 2,400 something steps.
Wow.
And that's terrible. You know, the elevator takes you up in like 1 minute, and we took hours. So we
I bet.
started on the ground floor. The first 10 were okay, you know, I've done that before for training purposes, but I did never more than probably like 10 floors before. And that was 105, so 10x the thing that I did before. And even like 10 floors were really tough for me. So I ended up pushing to the 33rd floor, which was like almost a third way done. And then I took a longer sitting break. I drank a lot of water, and I looked out of the window because in the staircase you didn't see anything. It was just like the same stairs over and over again. But on the 33rd floor, they had like a little station where you can get water, some snacks, and that stuff. And you could also look out, and you already saw like I'm way higher than the streets, you know. And
Mhm.
I ended up being on -3 level below the surface where we started. So I was like, what the fuck? That's a huge height I already covered. But I also knew it was like two-thirds of it more, and I was already done with like doing that. So I pushed myself, did like floor, probably like 5 floors, and then I took a sitting break and then 5 floors, and then a sitting break, 5 floors, sitting break, and then I was like around floor 50, 55, and then it really started to hit me like the race from the day before, and all the stairs. So I was going super slow. I did one flight of scare, one level or one floor of stairs. I sat down again and did another level, and it took me probably like I think like 2 hours 50 or something like that. 2 hours and 50 in a like staircase. You know, it's stupid. And the fastest runner was going up in probably like I think like 20 minutes or something like that.
Wow.
So
Wow.
it was so slow but so rewarding at the same time. So I kept going. When I reached the top, it was amazing. The stairs kept going, being smaller and smaller and smaller. but I knew like once they got smaller, you knew like you're like closer to the top. So I reached the finish, 105th floor of Willis Tower, with an amazing view about Lake Michigan and all the surrounding skyscrapers. So I was up there and I was so done. I laid on the floor, wouldn't move, couldn't move. I was just like there existing. And probably like half an hour later, I was like, let's get out of here. So I took the elevator down like all the other people, and I took it down and it went by like in a minute.
Yeah, yeah.
All the distance. It took me like almost 3 hours to get up there. And then it went by just like by the minute.
Do you have a
It was,
massive sense of accomplishment at the end of something like that, though?
sorry?
Do you have a huge sense of accomplishment at the end of something like that?
Yes, it was like, I redefined what's possible after a spinal cord injury because I'm pretty sure worldwide nobody has ever done a stair climbing competition after a spinal cord injury that high.
Yeah,
So I was like, I'm the first on the world who does that after a spinal cord injury.
love it.
And the really toughest thing was the apartment where we stayed was on the third floor with no elevator. So we went to a restaurant, got some food, and then we headed back home to the apartment in the afternoon. And there was no elevator, so I had to climb 3 more flights of stairs. And I was like, "What the fuck? Why? You just did 105 of them, and the last three to the apartment were just like as terrible as probably like 50 floors.
A little
It's hell."
warm down.
So yeah, it was terrible. I recovered from that not really well. I ended up being on the airport the next week or the next day actually. And HYROX America gifted me a Go Work weight vest, and I had to took that with me on the airport, which was also stupid because that thing was so heavy, and I had to push it around in my suitcase around the airport, which made it way heavier and way more complicated to push and pull around the airport. So
Wow.
anyway, I went back down to Miami and soon after home to Germany. And the other crazy, I did another stair climbing competition in Germany, the longest staircase in Germany. It's always in the summer. It's 1,900 steps, but all in one row. So it's the longest staircase. And it was also because the stairs in Chicago were like all the same and super easy. And therefore, some steps were higher, some small, some big. So it was way more complicated to do it. And I also didn't have a handrail, so I had to do it with two crutches, which was way more complicated or way more difficult in terms of balance. So I did that stair climbing competition. I did an athletics race, which is like an obstacle mud race on the top of the mountain. So it's on 2,000 meters of elevation on the mountain. It was in the summertime, but we only had 12 degrees Celsius. So it was super cold and windy and cloudy. So it was so cold, and with all the ice bath, and there was different obstacles. The toughest one was over a 3 meter big wall where you had to get over somehow. And the other one was walking on tires, on all tires. So I had to balance around them, and I fell down on the tires, which was not a big problem. But to get up on that was pretty complicated. You had to crawl underneath some sticky metal going across, and you had to crawl underneath in pure mud and dirt. That was pretty fun. uh, you had to walk across a mountain river upstream for probably like 20 meters or something like that in the cold mountain water. So, and you had to hang on and do a lot of obstacle racing. It was super fun. I did another Spartan competition, which was super fun as well. And I did a triathlon. So the
Triathlon.
first triathlon, exactly. And that was pretty complicated because the organizer were like no e-bikes allowed, and I'm only able to like be on a two-wheel bike on an e-bike. because like to start and to to start basically it's you need a lot of force in one movement to start pedaling. Like once I'm pedal, I could no I mean I could if it's exactly leveled and I have a race cycle I could push it, but pretty slow. So I did that on an e-bike and they were like no e-bikes allowed, but I had to get around that somehow, so I made it happen. And I started with the swim. It was a 400-meter swim, which was kind of okay. I mean, I was way slower than anyone else, but I did that. The race was 20 kilometers of biking, which ended up being fine, and a 5K walk after it. So I did that triathlon, and I'm excited. There's one more race, one more thing that was the toughest I ever did. And I'm sure even from the tough HYROX people, almost nobody did something like that before. You
Go
excited?
on, go on. Yeah.
Okay, so it was a 24-hour walking competition.
Wow.
It started Saturday at 10 o'clock and it finished Sunday on 10 o'clock in the morning. So I started that, I was at the finish line, and I did my rough calculation. Like the biggest walking distance I did before was at HYROX Cologne, which ended up being 16 kilometers on the whole day because I was going around the expo and everything. And I thought like the whole summer I want to do a half marathon, and I never did that before. And I was like, no, I can't do it, whatever. And I've just never felt ready for a half marathon. And then I did the math, how much I could walk if I take some breaks and if I walk slowly, how much I could walk in 24 hours. And I ended up being like in my head, I was like, maybe I could go to 25 or 30 kilometers in that 24-hour period. And somehow I was like, what if I could do 42 kilometers a full marathon? Because I was so far away from that, but at the same time, I was like just like interested in pushing it. So I went for it. I started. I did and it was 8K laps, so 8 kilometers in a lap format. So you could have all your stuff at one place. I ended up using crutches and a rollator. Why a rollator? Because it's way easier on your hands than having the crutches all the time. So I did one lap with crutches. I did the other lap with the rollator, another one with the crutches, another one with the rollator, and then it was evening. And then the really hard part of the race begins, when it's getting dark and
Yeah.
you just have to push through the night and you're already tired at that point. So and in the night, because the track was also not super leveled, I felt not that comfortable with the rollator, so I only kept going with the crutches through the night. And it was terrible. It was stupid. It was ridiculous. I just wanted to quit. But at the same time, I was already 26, 27 kilometers into the race. I wanted to finish that race and I wanted to do the full marathon distance, which I have never even done close before that. So I was keep going with that and I was struggling in the night. And a good friend of mine and PT was there to support me during the race and also to walk with me. And she quit it at 5 a.m. in the morning because she was just like over it. And I'm like, I have to keep going because I'm gonna finish that. So I kept going alone on that race, and it was just like it was so tough. It was cold. I was exhausted. I was tired, but I kept going. So I kept going, and at 9 o'clock in the morning, I had my 42-kilometer distance done, a full
Yes.
one after being paralyzed.
That's incredible.
And that's incredible. And it was emotional to finish, and it felt so amazing to do that.
That's like incredible because it's not just the mental aspect. It's not just the physical aspect to going for 24 hours, but there's like the huge mental side to going for so long, the lack of sleep, the concentration that's needed just to move, going through the night, everything like that is, yeah, it's not just the physical aspect to it, is it?
No, it is 100% mental because at some point you want to quit,
Yeah.
and it's so hard. It's like still it's harder for me to do walking than like for a person with no injury. So it's still like I have to concentrate more and I have to push way more through my upper body, even on races that long. And shoulders and hands are just not made for walking. You know,
Yeah,
they're good for some activity, but for the endurance, even if I have built incredible endurance in that muscle groups, it's not still not made for that. So
yeah,
it's pretty tough all the time, all the races.
incredible. Okay, so I wanted to ask you about this. I was reading an article with you, and you talked about your 10x rule. Can you talk about that a little bit more?
So yes, 10x is some concept that I discovered way before my injury. And it just means like if you want to achieve a goal that you want to achieve, probably like you want to do a 5K run. And then like normal people go like, what do you have to train for? I have to train for a 5K. So I do some training with 5 kilometer distances over a week, probably like 2 times. And I should be good to go for a 5K. So in 10x is like the difference. 10x says like you have to multiply your goal by 10 and you do that and that would be ending up like doing a 50K race. Oh. And then you would train way different for that. You would just not go for 5 kilometer runs to finish your 5 kilometer race. You would go for long runs. You would do marathon distance. You would do a lot of endurance training, all the stuff to achieve that 50K race.
Mhm.
So if you multiply your goals and you train for the huge goal, the bigger goal, it will be 100% easy and certain that you will finish that 5K race. And that's how I trained through the whole recovery, basically.
Yeah.
So you set your goal way bigger that you want to achieve, and it will be way easier and way faster to get to that original goal that you wanted to achieve that seemed impossible before you multiplied your goal.
Do you have any more big goals that you want to achieve from a sporting perspective, or anything in life? Is there anything
I
you
mean,
focused on?
I have been back on the mountains. I did some Via Ferradas, some small ones. I've been back on smaller mountains here in the area, and
Okay.
I will keep going with that. I did over 200 kilometers on the bike overnight as well, and some stuff like that. I will have the 24-hour walking competition again this summer.
Okay.
So if you're into stupid races like HYROX, you should definitely come with me and follow me on the journey to walk 24 hours and see how much you can walk in 24 hours. I will do that. I will also have a 36-hour event coming up this summer. The goal is for all the participants to walk up the height of the Mount Everest, so 8,800 meters, vertical meters. And that's on a 500-meter mountain where you have a cable car. So the goal is to go up, I think, like 17 times in that time
Mhm.
period. I'm 100% sure, or pretty sure, I will not be anywhere close to that 8,000-meter vertical gain, but I will try my best and see where I can go on that. So that's something really, really crazy I want to do, or I'm already signed up for this summer. It's called alpine8.eu is the website of them, and it's in Austria. Pretty nice event. And I'm in tomorrow HYROX. I will be at the HYROX World Championships for sure. I'm thinking of doing a Dakar race. I'm thinking of doing a Olympic triathlon this summer and more racing.
Brilliant. Okay. Well, this has been amazing. Your story is incredible. You're hugely inspirational. I know to so many people in the community, and showing what's like possible is amazing. So thank you for sharing all this. Um, Before we finish up, is there anything else I should have asked you that you want to talk about? And then also, like, where should people go if they want to follow you, find out more about you, everything you're doing?
So if you want to find out more about me, just go to Instagram at SCI Motivation for spinal cord injury motivation at SCI Motivation. And then you find all of my profile with over 400 videos and posts all about my injury, how I recovered, all about races. You will find the HYROX race interviews with me. you will find all the other videos to all the tough, super strong events I did. So get inspired, follow me along there. If you have any questions, just text me on Instagram. I'm happy to reply. I'm happy to get in touch with all the amazing HYROX people and all the amazing people in my community to answer questions, to help out, and to get people inspired where they want to be.
Love it. You definitely do that. All right. Well, thank you so much, and I'll see you in Nice.
Thank you. I will see you there. It's gonna be a fantastic event, and make sure you are there. There's something really incredible coming up that I already plan out with HYROX at the moment. So be excited for that one for Friday night and for my race on Saturday.
All right. Love it. All right.
Would love to
Brilliant.
see you
Thank you.
there, and all people from the community as well. And one last thing, if you see me at any HYROX race, I'm not the one who like will ignore you if you like say hi or anything. So just come by, say hi. Would love to speak with people and get people inspired to be better at what they do.
Good man. Awesome. All right. Thank you.